This is the water table.
A chance to hear the agricultural side of these issues.
Place for people to go find information and education.
Water management is just going to become even more critical into the future.
How misunderstood what we do is.
I would encourage people to open their minds and listen to this dialogue.
This week, we're taking the Water Table podcast on the road to Melbourne, Iowa. We will be visiting the Iowa LICA Farm and the Iowa LICA Field Day. Join us as we interview some great guests. Well, welcome back to the Water Table podcast. Happy to be here on site at the Iowa LICA Farm and have some great guests that we're going to talk about conservation, about batch and build. Matt McDonald with the state of Iowa, Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, and Ruth McCabe with Heartland Co-op have joined me. They work together on a lot of these practices, and excited to have you both and to just talk about what you guys do and how what you do positively impacts agriculture, positively impacts water quality in the state of Iowa and beyond. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
There's a lot of different practices out there with bioreactors, with saturated buffers. You guys are working on something here, I think the last couple of days, a batch and build process. Talk a little bit about that. What is it, kind of in the basic terms, and then we'll get into more detail.
Sure. First want to say welcome to the LICA Farm. Welcome to Iowa. Want to throw a couple items out there just to kind of show what Iowa is all about here. So it's a state in the upper Midwest, so we're not the potato state, we're
yeah.
Iowa.
And Cleveland is not here either, we're not Ohio.
Yes, exactly. So Iowa, we're a heavily agricultural state, so we're number one in the production of corn, pork, eggs, ethanol, and red meat. Number two in soybeans and ag products exported. And number three in the number of farms, but we are also number one in the production of saturated buffers and bioreactors. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that we're number one in saturated buffers and bioreactors because we have this voluntary nutrient reduction plan. It's 10 years old at this point, and everybody here cares a lot about the amount of nutrients, the amount of manure, the amount of soil that is running into our rivers, and we care a lot about it because we want to stop it. Our state's livelihood, our economic future is baked into our soil and keeping our nutrients in our fields. So we have this voluntary nutrient reduction strategy, and it calls for us to reduce the amount of nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, and the amount of sediment that we are losing to our waterways. And so saturated buffers and bioreactors address a lot of those concerns, and so it's really awesome that we're number one in the nation for getting those installed. There's this big machine going behind me right now. It's great.
Yeah. Well, it's all part of the effects
Welcome
here, and I think...
Yeah, welcome to Iowa.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you are, you're going to have large machines driving around you at some point in time throughout a day.
Right. So when you talk about that and, the nutrient reduction strategy and goals, but also let's start back a little bit further on why. Why is Iowa leading the nation in all some of these good things and then some of trying to build solutions?
Yeah, I have actually we're number one speech. If anybody ever comes to a presentation that I give, they're going to hear me give this speech. But like Matt said, I usually start by saying Iowa's number one. We're number one in pork production. We're number one in egg production. We're number one in corn production. And we're also number one in nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment loading to the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're an agricultural powerhouse, that is an unfortunate byproduct, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy was designed 10 years ago in an effort co-developed by Iowa State University, by IDALs, by farmers, by ag retailers, by everybody in the industry who stepped into it, scientists, you name it. And we said, how can we farm in a way that's going to reduce the environmental impact, that's going to reduce losing, like I said a minute ago, our very valuable soil and our nutrients. Yeah. We are a big exporter of nutrients and sediment, and we are working really hard to reduce that.
Yeah.
And Iowa just celebrated our 50th anniversary of our cost share programs for, like we build terraces, ponds, and that type of thing. So we have a conservation delivery system already in place. Landowners and contractors have been working for more than 50 years to put these practices in that we're seeing behind us here at the LICA Farm. But now we're focusing on some other things that we need to address in our state too. So obviously we got some water quality concerns that we would like to work on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we're knocking it out of the park because we're awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about, I think people forget about Iowa, this kind of the landscape of Iowa, and you know, why is Iowa number one in some of these negative areas of loss of topsoil and the nutrients in the Gulf of Mexico, things like that. And I think the general public right away goes to, well, it's because they're the biggest producer of crops. They're, you know, so intensive agriculture with animal agriculture and everything else. That's probably part of it, but explain that a little bit and talk about that.
It's because we're not flat. Everyone
right.
says Iowa's flat, and it's like, first of all, Ragbri, which is a large cross-state bike ride, is happening right now in Iowa. And as every newbie to Ragbri learns, this is not a flat state. We slope gently on both sides towards two major navigable rivers. In fact, some more trivia for those of you who listen to this. If you win $1 million on a trivia show, you can send part of that to me. Iowa is the only state in the Union that is bordered by two navigable rivers, the Missouri on one side and the Mississippi on the other. And we slope gently towards both of those rivers. And so slowly but surely, every watershed in our state goes to one of those two rivers.
Yeah, it's, you know, I'd like to touch on that a little bit more. In fact, what you just said about people don't realize in the Ragbri example, driving down here, I took my son with me, and he said, you know, this is more rolling.
Yep.
And you hear about, you know, Iowa being the best farmland, and it probably is. I'm not going to argue that.
Oh,
but,
it totally is.
But you just assume that also means, you know, flat as this table. It's a garden. Everything is, and it has more to do with, you know, rain events, with heat units, all those things that make it great. But most people, because they hear the term Iowa has the best farmland right away, don't equate that to any rolling hills or any topography at all.
It's our soils.
Yep.
Yeah, it's our soils. I've actually, side note, on top of being an agronomist for a cooperative, I'm also a Nuffield International Farming Scholar. So I was selected to represent the United States and Iowa in 2022. I traveled to other countries, and I study agriculture in those countries. And I can tell you definitively, without a doubt, Iowa has the best soil in the world. Fight me. Fight me. Well, we really do.
Somebody will.
Yeah, somebody probably will. And I'll win. And that's just how it goes. But yeah, it's our soil that makes it such good agricultural land. And we're flat in some places, sure. If you drive 35 south through Iowa, and that's the only part of Iowa you see, you're going to think Iowa's flat.
Yeah, as you get closer to the rivers.
But if you go to either side of the state, you will learn very quickly that we ain't flat.
So, digressing a little bit, but Ruth, where are you from originally?
Oh no. Okay, this is going to discredit me somewhat. I'm from Long Beach, California.
Really? Well, the reason I ask is I know Matt's from Missouri, I'm from Minnesota, and you act a lot more like an Iowan than Matt does.
I know, yeah.
Which
That's because
I was the best is
Okay.
usually from an Iowan.
That's because anybody who's from California,
They're not gonna
they're going to
claim
leave.
that. Yeah.
They're going to leave. And anybody that lives there and loves it is not native. You can also fight me on that. But anyway, I was served in the military, and I traveled around, and I was stationed briefly here in the Midwest, and I loved it. And so when I got out, I came back. Actually went to Minnesota for my bachelor's, and I got my master's in Iowa, and I fell in love with it down here. I also fell in love with a small town Iowan.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Hubs.
Okay.
And but yeah, Iowa won my heart. Iowa also has the best sunsets you will ever see in the world. You can fight me on that as well.
There'll be
Yeah,
lots
I'm
of
just
fights.
going- yeah, I'm
Definitely somebody's going to fight you on that one.
I'm going all in.
Yeah,
I'm doubling
yeah.
down on my love for
Yeah.
Iowa.
Yeah.
I love it.
Missouri's beautiful too, Matt.
You know, I always call it the land of milk and honey, the Golden State, but Ozarks, definitely a lot more terrain in Missouri,
Yeah.
too.
Oh, the Ozarks
Yeah.
are gorgeous. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is digressing, but the Ozarks are beautiful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Which is just fine. But so let's talk more about batch and build and
Yes.
you know.
We are excited about these batch and build concepts. So for the last 50 years, we've been working through our local soil and water conservation districts. They work with landowners specifically to install conservation projects. Those landowners hire the contractor or build it themselves. All depends on the situation there. But That delivery system has worked well for the last 50 years. Now, since we're focusing on these new practices, water quality, we're working in a lot different landscape of Iowa. So a lot of the conservation work that is done in the past has been in the southern states, just because that's where the terrain is, that's where the erosion is in Iowa. Now we're focused on the tile drain landscape in Iowa, which is generally in the northern half of Iowa. So when you get there, you got less rolling hills.
Yep.
You got a lot of tile out there that's draining to be, so the land can be productive. And with that, obviously there's really good ground, and they grow a lot of crops on that ground. And a lot of those producers have not worked with our agency in the past, just because they haven't needed to. Just we're addressing soil erosion, and there's not as much soil erosion in those parts of the state. So now we're addressing nitrogen loss, phosphorus loss. So with the batch and build method, we wanted to put together a method where we could put more practices on the ground quicker. Like I said, we've been doing this for 10 years, but we counted a success, 1 or 2 built a year in each project, and that was a huge success. That's not going to cut it for what the goals we want to meet.
Right.
So definitely some people had some ideas out there. Polk County was our first batch and build in the state of Iowa. And John Swanson, bless his heart, you give him a challenge, he's going to go get it.
Yeah.
So he worked his magic, talked to a whole bunch of public entities, a whole bunch of producers, a whole bunch of industry folks, and put together this package that we use now, or we're springboarding off now to deliver more practices being on the ground. So it's kind of an exciting time in Iowa. We're building more practices now than we ever have since we started doing this, and it is kind of a neat time to be in Iowa and kind of see it happen.
Yeah. And just right at the bottom of that, it feels like to me of that bell curve where it's it's just going to start to.
This is a really exciting time. I've said this to folks who are considering younger graduates from college, for example. I've told them this is the most exciting time to be getting involved in conservation in Iowa, because we're just at the beginning, and we're starting to see these projects building partnerships, real public-private partnerships. Where everybody has a common goal, and we set aside any other differences we might have, and we work towards that common goal. The real thing, it's like they're just starting to take off, and it's only going to get cooler from here. Besides, there's also really cool people who work in this industry.
Right.
I'm not speaking about myself or Matt. I'm just saying.
Right.
A lot of cool.
John Swanson. We'll throw since he's not here, we'll throw him into the.
Yep.
Well, there's also passionate people that that have been involved. We talk about this as just starting in the bell curve. It is just starting, but there's been people that have been pounding this drum for a long time already, and we got to give them a lot of credit for what they knew needed to happen.
You bet.
Man, we could just read off a list of names and take up the next hour.
Yeah, we could.
Of all the people who have passionately given their careers to trying to
and honestly,
all of their work.
The landowners in Iowa, most of them want to leave the ground better than when they got it.
Right.
And most of them are passionate about doing something like this. It's just putting together a system that we can make it happen for them to do that. So
make it easy.
Yep. And the dollars and cents got to work. And this is kind of how this delivery method was kind of put together. It doesn't really have a lot of agronomic benefit for the producer. These practices don't, but they have a huge public benefit for the public. So just making it easy for contractors, for the land producers, for groups that want to do projects, stuff like that. That's kind of why this type of approach is taken.
Should we, just out of curiosity, I don't know how much listeners will know about tile drainage. I don't know how much they know about what a saturated buffer or a bioreactor is.
We've talked about it on the water table. Let's go there, because not all of our listeners, we got people that are new to the water table and may not go back. And so let's talk about
posters here.
What is a saturated buffer, Ruth?
It'd be cool if we could show posters to our microphones,
to
the dead cats, and then our audience would see it. All right, so
dead cats.
First of all, Iowa has a lot of tile drainage, and maybe everybody knows what that is, but 2-second overview. That's plastic piping underneath the soil that pulls water.
Not all plastic.
Some of it's clay.
Yep.
It was called tile because it was made out of clay back in the day.
Yep.
For those of us under the age of 40, however, I'm just kidding. Tile is basically now perforated plastic pipe in the soil that pulls water off the soil so that you can grow a crop without it drowning. Because Iowa gets a lot of rain, and we have heavy, amazing, beautiful, loamy clay, silty loam soils, the best soil on the planet. I'll stop going on about that. And so tile drainage pulls that water off and shuttles it right to a local ditch, drainage ditch, creek, stream, you name it. That can cause problems. And so a saturated buffer and a bioreactor are structures that are, I call them basically septic tanks, if you know what a septic tank or septic system is, for a farm field without the solids holding tank.
Yep.
So basically it's lateral line, if you know how a septic tank is constructed, you have these perforated lateral lines that allow the water to move through the soil before it reaches the waterway. So with a saturated buffer, you run some perforated pipe alongside the ditch or the creek that is next to the field, and then the water that comes out of that tile moving out of that field connects to that perforated pipe next to the stream, and the water is forced to move through the soil. And by doing so above ground, any soil that would be eroded is captured by the grassy buffer strip, and below ground, below the soil, nitrates are removed by bacteria in the soil, and then they're released as N2 gas.
Yeah, nature is working for us now.
Yeah. We're utilizing what nature does best,
Yep.
And a bioreactor is similar. Bioreactors are more flexible in where they can be installed because they don't have to be next to a creek or a stream. They just need to be connected to a tile main. And they're kind of like giant swimming pools, literally giant swimming pools filled with wood chips. And instead of soil treating for removing nitrates, the wood chips are removing the nitrates. The water's forced to move through the wood chips in the swimming pool, and then it comes out the other end and continues on through the tile. The nice thing about these structures, in both instances, in times of high flow, let's say it's in the spring when there's snow melt, etc., there is a bypass tile line that allows for excess water to just move past the structure. So we're not flooding fields. We're not recreating the same problem we had back in the day.
People tiled those fields for a reason. We don't want to impede any of that tile drainage back up into the field. Yep. And these act like kidneys for Iowa's tile drainage system. So we're cleaning the water before it's released into the waterways there.
Let's talk about in a minute about some of the results that are coming out of them. But before I do that, I want to share, because you guys might not know either, but about the tile side of that, the plastic pipe side of that is, as we go, the general public, like we talked about earlier, in the water quality side, deserves better water quality. They're demanding better water quality. Yeah. There also is this sense around plastic pipe that plastic, and we talked about this in some conversations last night, but plastic isn't a good thing, and in reality, one of the best things you can do with recycled plastic, so we're all going to have plastic, whether it's Tide bottles, milk jugs, is grind that into pipe that's going to go underground, that's going to grow a better crop, that if we do it right with saturated buffers, then is going to have clean, good quality water coming out the other side. And most of us tile manufacturers now are making all of our agricultural products with up to 100% recycled plastic. So if you're not doing that, probably not worth your salt in this industry. But
I was just listening to a podcast yesterday on fast fashion and clothing, and how the statistics on fast fashion would curl your hair, but it's number 2 in most forms of pollution in the world. So when you're buying your, cheap shirt from large big box store or whatever, or clicking online and getting something delivered in less than 24 hours, it's A, made out of plastic, and B, it's designed to be worn less than 7 times, and then you're supposed to throw it out and buy new. Most of that, even if you donate it to the Goodwill, ends up in landfills.
Yeah.
So if I had a choice, I'd rather, not that I contribute to fast fashion, I don't, I'm cheap, but if I'm going to throw clothes away, I would like to think that they're going to get recycled into tile pipe or something useful like a bench or whatever, than knowing that they're just going to go sit in a landfill and not even get used. So I'm digging what you're.
Yeah. Another shout out to Iowa. The state does do a lot of recycling of plastic bottles, just trash that does not end up in landfills. So that's a lot different from some of the other states in the Midwest.
Because Iowa is amazing.
Yeah, there you go.
There's good plastics and bad plastics, and our industry's really, on the pipe side, is really involved in in this whole initiative. And some of the professors we're working with and the material scientists are really seeing that the younger generation looks at, when they hear the word plastic, they look at it as a negative until they see what we can do with it in agricultural drainage pipe, and they can get pretty excited and passionate about that. So
Sure.
Because agriculture's cool.
yeah. So let's talk about results on what are you guys seeing for results, and how are you measuring results?
Sure. I forgot to mention that we are treating the baseline tile flow. We're not treating the extra water that's coming off that. So that's our target with these practices is, when it's not raining, the water that's coming through the tile, that's what we're treating. We'll treat a little bit of the water from the precipitation events, but that's what we're treating here. So that leads to results is these practices that are showing that they are over 50% effective over the course of a year in reduction of nitrates. So that's pretty significant when you're talking about those tiles flow 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, most of the year. That's kind of neat.
Well, not only that, but it's when you look at how to reduce pollutants in different applications, it's extremely cost-effective way of doing it.
You bet. And then just plug out the LICA. So they're building a saturated buffer here as we speak, where they actually installed a pattern tile system and practice at the bottom of it. That would be an ideal situation for folks in Iowa that are looking to upgrade their drainage. We could easily put a practice at the bottom of that, very easily. So landowners, industry folks out there, that's what we really want to do too. So we have retrofitted a lot of these projects in Iowa, but if they're already installing tile or people are upgrading, which happens a lot in Iowa, that would be an ideal situation to stick one of these in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think saturated buffers and bioreactors have this rough ballpark figure of over the course of an entire year, 50% treatment rate. During times of really low flow, they can be 80, 90% effective at treating the water that moves through them, sometimes close to 100%. And then, of course, during times of really high flow, think snow melt, rainstorms, then that number drops because, again, we don't want to flood a field. So there is a bypass line on these structures that allows for water to go past them. But 50% treatment? I mean, I've seen the numbers. Yeah. It depends on the size. You got to remember these structures are sized for the field that they're going into, the tile that they're handling, the intake tile. So it depends, but I've seen numbers that are, 50 pounds nitrogen up to several hundred or even more than that. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's amazing. Right, per acre. I should clarify that, right? So it's like, holy cow. That's phenomenal. And these numbers are so high, of course, because tile drainage isn't limited to a single field. Right. I mean, you can have tile moving through a field that's draining 3 or 4 other fields in that area, maybe even more than that. And so we can see just phenomenal treatment from these structures, not just treating one field, but treating many, many fields.
Well, I think at this LICA farm, isn't it something like 1,000 acres is what this little...
That's drained
through the system here, yes.
Yeah.
So I think they've shown numbers of 95% of nutrient capture by the time it ends, the water releases at the end of this farm. So that's pretty neat.
So it's often that I get to do podcasts. It's not often that I get to do it with a little crowd. I'm just wondering, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm wondering, do you ever find any spiders out in these structures or anything like that?
I don't even want to mention to you the animals that we have found.
Really?
Anything that probably should talk about.
Yeah, we've had poor Will actually.
Where's he at?
One of my conservation agronomists. I'm a conservation agronomist, and I have conservation agronomists who work for me as a part of my team at Heartland. And I have some good pictures of one of my agronomists, Will, as he's pulling the remains of a raccoon out of a outlet. It was he's a trooper, I'll just say that. But I've opened the lids of these things to see spiders, like very large spiders. I maybe have a little bit of trauma. But you open them and there's just this hairy wolf spider that's like the size of your palm. Oh yeah. I mean, they're
any creature that crawls or lives near a stream is going to be
lots of snakes. I don't mind reptiles. I don't mind snakes. Snakes are fine. We're cool on snakes.
Spiders, on the other hand.
Not when they're the size of your hand, man. Not when they're fuzzy and they look like a rodent.
Moving on, but 50% reduction, how do we get the word out on that? How do we continue to tell our story? And when it comes to, I think when it's that good, there's people that'll just want to do what's right, but then also how do we tell it from the standpoint of funding? And I know you guys are really involved in that on both local, state, and federal level. Where should we go with that with funding?
So let's just bring up the subject of partnership. So obviously one of our partners is nature here, so that's on our partners list. But we also have other partners, which is why we're talking today. So I will just let Ruth handle that from here.
I get very excited.
She brings in so many other partners, and they all have different networks.
Yeah.
So our normal conservation partners, we've expanded tremendously over the last 3-4 years. So I'll let Ruth kind of take it from there.
So part of my goal on the conservation team at Heartland, Heartland created its conservation team in 2020. I was hired at that time to help them flesh out how an ag-retailer could play a role in conservation. We knew this is the way of the future. This is what's coming. We've got to step into that space and play a role in it. And so my goal was to form partnerships with anybody who was willing to actually focus on a common goal and get stuff done.
That was the bleep. There you go.
Oh man, I was so proud of myself. I was doing so good. You can just erase that and I'll say it over again. Our goal behind these partnerships is to find partners who would come to the table, focus on a common goal, and focus on getting stuff. There you go. There you go. Getting shit done. That's what we care about. And I'm serious about this, right? It can be very divisive in agriculture in general. You get the environmentalist side, you get urban folks, you get rural folks, and it becomes this divisive issue, and it doesn't need to be. This is so silly. It doesn't need to be divisive, but everybody, agencies, public, private, nonprofit, everybody can come together and say, what's our common goal? We want to clean up this watershed. We want to reduce nitrates in this watershed. We want to reduce soil or sediment loading. Let's focus on that. We can set aside political agenda. We can set aside other agendas. Those get left at the door. When we come together, we focus on what the solutions are to solve this problem. Then we work together. We come up with a solution, and then we go after it. We attack it. We throw everything that we have at it. That's what a batch and build is, and that's what these public-private partnerships are in conservation. I will not partner with agencies who will not focus on the problem and work with me to just get shit done. I won't do it. And anybody that comes and wants to grouse or not really solve the problem, I don't have time for that. We only focus on getting things done. So, for example, the batch and build at Heartland, it was, I have been partnering with Polk County. My team has been partnering with Polk County for the last 3 years on their batch and build. Last year, I said, all right, we can do one. We can do one at Heartland with our customer base. We can do this on our own. And I went to Matt, I went to Idals, and I said, I have this wild, crazy idea. Hear me out. I think we can do this. I just need to find a partner who can act as a fiscal agent. I need to find an engineering partner. We would work with the state to bid out for contractors, installers. I think we can do this. And Idals was like, yes, we think you can. And then maybe they were behind closed doors thinking, there's no way this lady's going to do this. But guess what? Now it has worked. My batch and build has 57 structures this year, and we're looking at maybe twice that next year. We're really excited about the amount of progress we've seen, and we're not the only batch. There are several other batches going on right now by equally aggressive and excited partners, and it doesn't have to end with an ag retailer. It could be a construction installer who leads a batch. It could be another, nonprofit like INREC or Iowa Seed Association.
These guys right behind us here.
That leads a batch. It doesn't have to be an ag retailer. It doesn't have to be a county. You need to partner with a county. You need to partner with maybe an ag retailer or a construction installer. You need to bring these people and be a part of a team. But anybody can lead a batch and build project. So I get really excited about those kinds of public-private partnerships, and I talk really fast. Kudos to those of you who were listening to this on 2X and then you had to slow it down.
It's going to take the whole time to listen to it.
But anyway, public-private partnerships are where it's at, and finding partners who actually care about achieving the end goal as opposed to going through the motions at the beginning. Leave those people behind. They're just going to slow you down.
Well, and I think, though, that, in some cases, there's a lot of money out there for different practices, and we're just going to have to lead, and you guys are doing a great job of leading, even when you got your phone on, Matt.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I know. I put my phone on silent, Matt.
He's got two of them, so he doesn't know which
one of them, but not the other one. Sorry.
But I think
guy calling about batch and build actually.
Good answer.
Yeah.
But I think you know, the whole thing comes down to leadership and leading, and Iowa's doing a really good job of leading this. And I think that other states, other stakeholders, there's some frustration. I can hear, Ruth, from you and some of the stakeholders. But as you lead and you continue to prove that this is for the greater good and it's doing good, and we're seeing 50% reductions, that some of those, my hope is some of those things will kind of fade away and become easier to work with, and those kind of things. So
anybody that, the frustration I have with some stakeholders at just being slow to act or being unwilling to act because they think it's not going to work, those agencies will eventually get on board, or those companies will get on board, or whoever. And the reason why is because it is working. There is this sort of forward momentum at this point. In chemistry, they call it activation energy, right? To get to the top of that, as a catalyst, you have to achieve activation energy, and then at that point, the rest of the chemical reaction is an energetic excess. And
you're listening to Dr. McCabe now.
Well, I did get get my master's in crop physiology.
There you go.
I had lots of chemistry, man.
And I think one of the things that should be, you know, this comment might not be super popular in Iowa, but I think it's true, is that I think it's very exciting and encouraging when you see Iowa and Iowa farmers get on board with this, because I think Iowa, you could have said 20, 30 years ago that the farm community wasn't necessarily on board and was in some ways entitled, well, it's my land, I'm going to do it this way, and I know what's best for my land. And seeing that they're getting on board with this is really encouraging to share with other states and other stakeholders. So
part of the first batch and bill was to prove that this is possible. We worked with the same county that, you know, had a lawsuit against some counties in northwest Iowa, that we're proving this is successful. We can work with anybody to do that. We limit ourselves if we don't partner with others. So that's why Iowa has over 350 partners with our Water Quality Initiative program right now, and growing.
Yeah, and two, I want to quickly mention, you brought up the farmers and the landowners. I mean, there are more and more of those folks who are coming to me or coming to IDALS or coming to any of our partners on batches and saying, well, I'm not in your batch, but can I get a batch going in my area? And the answer is an emphatic yes. Get your neighbors together, get yourself a barn meeting, and let us know, because you absolutely can get a batch going in your area. We just need to have enough interest to form a batch. And I will say that from an agronomic perspective, my conservation team, sells all forms of conservation. I call it selling conservation, conversation for another time maybe, but we help people adopt any conservation practice as low risk, low reward as nitrogen stabilizers, which are still valuable, all the way up to, you want to put in a wetland? Cool, I'll help you put in a wetland, and everything in between. But for landowners and farmers who don't want to use no-till, who don't want to use cover crop, saturated buffers and bioreactors are a fantastic alternative for them. And my perspective is not that one conservation practice is any better than any other. My perspective is everybody needs to do something, and I don't care what that something is on that spectrum of conservation. Pick a practice for each field and roll with it. If everybody adopts one conservation practice, that's really going to solve a lot of our issues.
Yep. And Iowa is #1 in buffers along streams also. So that's why a lot of these practices are being pushed now, because there's a lot of the buffers already there. We can easily install a saturated buffer or bioreactor within these buffers.
Yeah, I will say.
Which tiles are going right through the buffer right now.
Yeah, having traveled, I just got back from a very long trip to several other countries, and it blew me away in all of these countries. None of them had buffers between their farm fields and their creeks or their rivers. I felt so naive. I was just mind blown. I was like, man, I was winning that game. We are nailing that.
Because it isn't different wherever you go. You're going to have the nutrient loss.
It blew me away. Yeah.
Well, good. What have we missed that you guys want to share and talk about?
Oh boy.
I know.
We got on the list here.
I gotta go. We haven't gone off the rails yet on the feds. No, I'm just kidding. We haven't gone there yet. I had to mention it. Oh, I can hear people behind me, and they're like, "Why?
I got something.
Have we chosen her as a spokesperson?"
We need more people to say yes to projects.
Oh, yes,
whether it be contractors bidding on these projects, or just promoting them to their customers. We do one-off cost share projects with these also, so we're not just doing batch and builds. We are installing these just with our normal cost share program. In Iowa, we can build a saturated buffer with 100% cost share if we have a single project, something like that. So if you just want to do one project, don't feel like you're alienated. We're not looking at you. So we are focusing on different watersheds right now, but pretty soon the whole state's going to be encompassing with projects. So
I will
we're just kind of
tack on.
slowly expanding upon there.
I'll tack on to that comment. You know, we've gone to conferences, we've gone to workshops, we've done presentations on batch and builds. I am a passionate cheerleader for the batch and build model. Obviously, anybody who's listening could probably pick up on that, but it's interesting to listen to audiences. There are some people who have this initial reaction of, because it's strange, because it's weird, they just are like, that's never going to work. That's not going to work. And if you're one of those people and you're in a presentation where you hear us talking about this and your first gut reaction is, nah, it's never been done that way, so we can't do it that way going forward, check that. Say yes more. Like, be more creative, be more flexible, be open-minded, whoever you are who's listening to this, because actually it does work, and it just requires people to set aside their reservations and say, instead of, it can't be this way, it's never been done this way, instead say, okay, how can we make this happen? What do we have to do to make this happen?
We work with an engineer that we almost got a mile-long saturated buffer just installed in the county north and west of here. He had 7 or 8 outlets entering the stream along this stretch, and almost got it. We probably could have if we cheated a little bit, but we didn't. But there are huge potential when you start looking at every single outlet that goes into the stream, not just one. So definitely want to take that home. If you're a landowner out there and you have a lot of outlets going to the stream, we can look at every single one of those and batch them together.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
if you're a tile contractor, installer, construction installer, you name it. If you're an engineer, if you're an ag retailer.
Yes. Yes. Just say yes.
We need to have that, you know, that we need you for the American military, you know, that Uncle Sam. We need to have the Uncle Sam now for we need you for conservation in Iowa.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to me to look back and think about agriculture and the business we're in with, you know, manufacturing pipe, and how agriculture has been, you know, the technology that has changed in agriculture is as great as any industry over the last 50 years. But it still took a lot of time for people to understand that a tile drainage system like they do in Iowa and Illinois and Ohio will work in North Dakota. They would just say it won't work here.
Oh yeah, it won't work here.
Until 20 years ago, they weren't doing any, and it does work there. And it's some of the same things you're talking about is you need more people to understand. You've proven it enough that it will work where they're at.
Yeah, look at cover crops for an example. A lot of people said that wouldn't work here in the state, but
there's people making it work.
There's people making it work. We got over 3 million acres in Iowa of cover crops now.
Yeah.
10 years ago, we had a couple thousand. We still need 3 million more acres on what top we got, but it's slowly gaining traction. And people are experimenting and making it work.
Conservation is like ice cream. Some people like pistachio.
Yes.
Some people like vanilla. Some people like strawberry.
Yeah.
Y'all are freaks because the right flavor is caramel macchiato. But anyway, my point here is there's a different flavor for everybody, and it can all work. So don't knock it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. Can you tell I'm thinking about lunch and ice cream?
I was going to say, well, where did that flavor come from? That was very specific.
That or like Rocky Road's pretty good.
You're getting us off the rails now.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I could have gone off the rails on a lot of other topics.
We're trying to hold it back here. But
I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to try to keep her on the right path.
Well, I didn't go off about the feds.
Yes.
Would you like to?
No.
Okay, good.
Absolutely not.
So, let me do this. I really appreciate you guys being with me on the water table today, Matt and Ruth, and great guests. And I'm going to give you the last word here on what do you want our listeners to know on the Water Table podcast?
We were going to be looking for new partners, new people wanting to do these types of projects, whether it be what we're talking about today or other conservation projects that we're working on. We're building ponds, we're building wetlands, we're building all types of there's like 5 different types of wetlands that people are getting creative and designing new different types of wetlands that we have never done before. We're doing drainage water recycling projects. We're doing our traditional projects. So there's all types of work going on in Iowa. And this is honestly a small part of that, but it's going to be a big part in the future.
If you are a landowner, or anybody else in the industry in any capacity, but specifically a landowner or farmer, and you want to be a part of a batch and build, you want a saturated buffer, you want a bioreactor, and you go to your local, county FSA NRCS office, and maybe they don't have anything going on or they don't know about anything. Don't don't dead end there. Reach out to Heartland Cooperative, reach out to Iowa Seed Association, reach out to INRAC, the Iowa Nutrient Research and Education Council, reach out directly to IDALS. Don't dead end just because one agency says, no, we don't have anything. That's not true. So just keep looking. If you reach a dead end, keep looking, because believe you me, we're all out here and we all want to see them be successful, and we will help you get what you need, a saturated buffer or a bioreactor.
Yeah, look for media releases in the future about different partners that we're going to be announcing here soon. So,
yep.
Great.
Yep.
Well, Ruth McCabe, Matt McDonald, thanks for joining me on the water table, and
Thank you.
We'd love to have you back on the podcast sometime.
Oh, that's
You
so sweet of
bet.
you to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode. I have so much fun recording these. I hope you have as much fun listening as I do recording. These episodes are available on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So find them and download them when you can. Thanks for joining us.